than what we are asked or supposed to do. That is why we are here for. So without wasting their time, I guess we'll move ahead. Just a little pause. We are streaming it on YouTube right now. Once they are live, I'll let you know, Yashas, to begin. By the meantime, you can ask what to say, your faculty coordinator and all. So before beginning to the decode session, we can wait.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I would like to welcome the faculty coordinator from AAAD, Waqar sir, also a former president of NASA India, 2015, and architect William sir, uh, the faculty in AAAD. Sir, your mic is on mute.
So, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, good evening, all. So, should we start now, or as ZB2 had mentioned, like we have to wait for the live stream?
Yeah,
part, right?
yeah, sir. We can start now.
Yeah. Okay, sir. So, yeah, starting from the initiation till now, the brief actually has been a tricky part, like as everyone has read it, because this year what we have been trying to do is trying to connect the process of design, that ANDC is the largest design competition in India specifically, and this is something which me, Waqar sir, everyone who are architecture students to the core, even now we are now professionals, but at the same time we know the value of that competition. So that was the precursor which the moderator actually installed in our mind. At the same time, what we thought is doing your design in terms of reality is something which will make things move ahead. So this is the background thought which went behind. So in terms of the overall brief, the first three words are very important in the brief, that is unlearn, relearn, and envision. So if you just look into the Oxford meaning of these words itself, right, you will get unlearn is something where you put away what you already know, not far away, keep it nearby so that you can go back to it and bring in new information in its place. And then you process it, understand it, and then you implement it. So that is what we have tried to convey in terms of doing case studies, site studies, identifying a site based on its significance, understanding them. This is the first precursor, that is unlearning what we know. Like, for example, let's take my own example. So I'm a conservation architect by profession. So if you take my qualification, my way of looking at things will be different. So if you see a urban planner, like their perspective will be different. The speciality of BArch students is they have a very holistic perspective which will look beyond these boundaries. So when we look into a site, trying to identify it, this is the unlearning part, where you forget or remove the prejudice. That will be the right word to use. The prejudice which you have in your mind will be removed, and then you look at the site as its true nature. So I'll just pick out one of the examples which we have mentioned in the brief. And to make a point, a bottom note, the examples which are mentioned in the brief are for a reason. They are very famous sites. They are very well known all across India, and they are for a reason, because everyone in every zone, that is NASA zone, everyone will be aware of these sites, right? So when you look at the site, what do you see will be categorized and recorded. That is where we come into the second part of the brief, that is relearning. So whatever we see on the site, we try to put it into a context which is relevant to our site. Context is a keyword here. So you make it relevant to your site, and then you envision. Envision is something, again, which is contextual. Specifically, I just want to take out an example. Like if you take a train from Kanyakumari to Srinagar, right? Every 50 kilometer, you will see a gradual change in whatever is around you. Not just the place, but the people also. And at the same time, how they do things around them. So that is something which we wanted to highlight over here. And that is why we want this brief to be slightly, what do we say, more personal to each zone, more personal to each participant, each entry. So we want everyone to look into examples which are relevant to you. So I was just making a quick note of a few examples, which I tried to like when we spoke to the moderator, the first thing which he told us, never make the examples to be the ruling guidelines for what you do. Because examples are things which you see, understand, and just take up the approach and the context. And then you apply it somewhere where you feel is relevant. You don't take it as a guideline or a, what do we say, a hard and fast rule that, okay, Chandni Chowk, this is what happened in Chandni Chowk, I will do the exact same thing in my side. It doesn't work like that. The context is different over here. The context will be different in the place where you are. So now I'll try. This was all slightly, what do we say, a vague way of saying it. And that was on purpose so that we don't actually decode the brief. That is your job to do. We are just trying to throw some light on the perspective which the moderator had. So in terms of a few case examples, I tried to take examples which were, what do we say, all across India, because everyone will have more affinity towards what they see every day. So the first one is like, okay, I try to take even non-famous examples also, because some of the questions which came across were, should it be very significant in history? Should it be very important in the timeline? So keep that in mind and just listen to these examples. So the first one is Spencer Plaza of Madras. So that has history, yes. But when we compare the space to, like, for example, something which was built in the 11th century, no, it is not that old. But at the same time, this Spencer Plaza has significance to the people who are living in the city. For people who are not aware of it, Spencer Plaza is in Madras. You can Google it. You'll find a lot of information about it. So that is something which is significant for people in Madras. Now, let us take any major city in the country. Every city will have a Chor Bazaar. So Chor Bazaar is the informal sector, which people usually call, what do we say, illegal, or things which are out of the, what do we say, the line of control. So why not bring those places into a slightly more formalized, a slightly more, what do we say, not formalized, organized way of putting it. So that can be a perspective which you can think about maybe. One more example for people who are around Chandigarh. Chandigarh sector 37, specifically sector 37. You just Google sector 37, you will know why I'm pointing it out. But the reason is every sector of Chandigarh has its essence from, as you know, you have studied a lot about Lee Corp, right? So the perspective is fixed. The architect is a very renowned person, so we know what he's thinking about. But when you go into sector 37, it is more of, what do we say? Okay, I am in this place, I am using it, I'll mold it according to what I want. So that sector is a place where it became molded for the people who are living in it, even though it is amidst a designed city. So that is an example. One more example is people who are around Madhya Pradesh, Bhopal, MP Nagar. Landmark can be DB Mall, which is there in MP Nagar. You just Google coaching institutes in Madhya Pradesh, you will suddenly see so many pointers in a very specific location in a map in Bhopal. So everyone knows what happens when a lot of coaching institutes come in together in a single place. Kota is a living example of that. Okay, I can read a few questions, but I think I'm not the right person to answer that question right now. So I'll just continue with the description which I'm giving, and we'll look into the questions as the council feels about it. So I'll continue with what I'm saying. Okay, so coaching institutes. When there are more than 4 coaching institutes in an area, there will be immediately requirement for student housing. When student housing comes in, there will be an immediate requirement for eateries. Then there will be an immediate requirement for informal sector. So many things are being cornered in an area, which is, the initiation was a coaching center. What history does a coaching center have? It is about the people who are coming together. It is about the function which is coming together. And it is the point of time at which it came together. So that is an example which we felt will shed some light into it. And there was a phrase, or what do we say, one of the schemes of the central government, which was mentioned in the brief, that is streets for people. So if you have tried looking into streets for people or tried Googling streets for people, you will get an idea that not all the streets which are being identified are like heritage streets or things like that. I'll give you a specific example of Tiruchirappalli. Streets for People project of Tiruchirappalli. There were 2 streets which were identified. One of the street has a very significant history. The name is Lawson's Road. So it has a very close, what do we say? I won't say specifically British, but I would call it East India Company related, right? Because East India Company came first, then British Raj came. So there was a very drastic difference between them. And the second street which came in is a bypass. The second street which was selected for Street for People is a bypass road, which was built not long ago. So why did that street become significant? So that is something where we should think about, right? So, okay, I can keep going on with examples, but the last example which every architecture student will connect with is food streets. Food streets are something which are there in almost every city, every tier 1, tier 2 city. Tier 3 cities will not have food streets. They will have melas. So things are different. But when you go, for example, Bangalore maybe, or Delhi, or even places like Vijayawada, you will have one food street, which is like the savior for every architecture student who goes there. They have spent time over there. But if you note, no, the same street which functions as a food street might not be a permanent setting. It will be something which is a food street at one time. Morning, it becomes something else. Morning, they'll be selling some vegetables, maybe. Afternoon, maybe the people who are working nearby, they'll come have their lunch over there. Evenings, maybe snack items start. Night, maybe ice creams and other things start, right? The things keep changing. The place is same. Users are constant. So the keywords which we want you to keep in mind is people, place, and time. People in a place over a period of time will develop it into something which they want to belong to. If I leave any one of you in a hostel room which is being allotted to you, and if I come back after 6 months, that room won't be the same as it was before. You will customize it, you will mold it, and you will get it customized for yourself. So this is the background for the examples and how to look at the site. Now, in terms of, how do you say, specifics of the site, we don't want to go into the detail of how specific it should be, but we have given you a guideline of building to street level. So something which I have to clarify on this is building on its own can be a community space. Like, again, an example, if you take the Kolkata market, which was recently renovated, not that recently, but it was renovated in Kolkata. The name of that is, okay, Kolkata market. Pretty simple to remember. So it's Kolkata market was renovated and it is now in a condition which people feel more connected towards. This sentence is something which might feel weird. People are already connected to the place. Then how do they feel connected more towards it right now? So the change which is happening is people are recognizing that the place which I'm taking is having significance. The place which I have taken has significance for n number of reasons. The market in Kolkata has significance not only because of history. History is one of the elements. The second thing is finances. There are so many people who have their livelihood dependent on that area. There are so many stakeholders who are coming into that picture. Third thing, consumers. People now have a single location where they can go and buy things which they are comfortable with. This market is not just the case of Kolkata. You can see in every city. I'm repeating this, every city. Okay, Esplanade Market, New Market. Okay, yeah, New Market. I have not heard the Esplanade Market part, but New Market I have. There are 2 conservation projects which have happened in Kolkata for 2 different markets. One is Higgs Market and the next is New Market. I think Higgs Market and New Market both are the same place. Correct me if I'm wrong. So markets. Now, if you are from Bangalore, maybe KR Market, that is a place, not just a building. Now, if I go into Chandni Chowk, it is a street. Again, the same thing, right? A same function is being spread out in a building, in a street, and in an area. That is something which we wanted to clarify. And one more thing which we felt had to be clarified was, should the site be one single piece or multiple pieces moving around, or multiple pieces scattered and fixed? So that is something which we had to focus on, right? So to keep the project more aligned and more synchronous, and not to have multiple endings of outputs which are coming in, we have tried to keep it as a single entity. Okay. Now that single entity doesn't have to be a sphere or a weird shape. It can be of any shape focused on one point or a street or an area. Okay, I'm doing these gestures to make my point more clear, so that it is not just a point. It can be a street also. Point example, KR Market, Google it. Street example, Chandni Chowk. Area example, now that is something which you have to think about. Area is not just a empty piece of land. Empty piece of land will be significant for someone who owns it maybe, or who has a personal connection to a land maybe. But we are talking about community here. So now, if you see the area of, how do we say, one of the examples which was given in the brief again.
Bhadra Fort.
Yeah, Bhadra Fort, if we take, it is, the name of the example itself is Bhadra Fort. So it can be a building also. It can be the area which is surrounding Bhadra Fort also, right? So that part has to be looked upon. So I think Bhadra Fort is something which I think Vakas sir can back me up on, because we both have been discussing the same thing with the, what do we say, the moderator. That is, how do we make something specific at the same time not trying to make it rigid? Making rigid is something which has been going on for a long time. That is, if I see a street, I don't want the street to be a specific street. It should be this size. It should be this shape. It should be so and so things. No. If the street is significant to you, to your community, to the people around you, prove it. Prove it with facts. That is where the data come in, right? So relevant data, which is apt for the site, will make sense to the output which you give. And okay, I think I've been answering too many questions at the same time. So I think Vakasa will continue now.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's really nice to connect back, on the NASA platform after some 6-7 years, again with the ANDC trophy. Anyways, so William sir has briefed quite well, like what exactly we are looking at, and few of the queries what we had received, they were mostly about the historical importance of the site, which is not the fact. Your site can be anything which is just significant in your whole city or your town. Okay, it could be a CBD area, it could be a residential area, it could be anything. What matters is the stakeholders. Okay, stakeholders as in there are multiple types of stakeholders. If you pick up a street, for example, you have different set of hawkers. There are different set of encroachers. Now, it's very important for you to understand the difference between a hawker and an encroacher. Who's encroaching upon the site? Who's a hawker whose livelihood is dependent upon that particular area? Okay. And similarly, you have to also identify in previous days when the settlements were small and before the development was going on well. So there used to be these small streets where, this ground floors used to be like commercial areas, partially residential, commercial, and the rest of it was commercial. But nowadays, if you pick up for an example, if I have to quote you, it could be of VV Puram in Bangalore. It's a very famous food street, which has this all food outlets, which becomes like a food street in the evening times, right? But it also has a lot of residential units. Now the stakeholders also become residential people who are going to reside there. Now, when you're collecting your data, the annexures and data formats, what we have given you as an attachment to the brief, that is just for your reference, for you to follow proper format, how you should structure your data collection. It's not that you're supposed to use the same set to collect the data, which is not even relevant for your site. Now, most of the data might not be relevant what format we have given. Those are the standard formats which the government agencies use. So now that is also one of our agenda, where we are trying to bridge that gap between the student community also with the actual implementation. We are trying to achieve that goal. where we are in constant discussion with the moderator and few of the government agencies, where we can directly feed these data and the proposals to the government agencies at some point, so that that could be thought about implementing also in lines with the smart city. And like there have been a couple of policies which have been quoted in the brief. Like there's policy about smart city. There's also a policy about these informal economy, like street hawkers and everybody. So the data what we collect during our student days, NASA and ANDC is a very big platform, and ANDC becomes like a very important trophy. It used to be. Even now, it is one of the important trophies. Now, if we are not collecting the data, and if you are just not doing the proposals right in the format what the government agencies require, then at the end of the day, we are not even serving to the communities, like what the theme of this year quotes in Envision. We have to give back something to the community. So that was the major crux, and informal economy and these stakeholders who are part of that particular street or that particular building or that particular area, whichever you're choosing, become very important here. Now, in stakeholders, even government agencies have to have a say in that. Now, when you are doing your data collection, you might as well interact with the local agencies also, like your corporations or the building development authorities or the town planning authorities or the electrical boards or the sewerage and sanitation boards, electricity boards. You can collect all these data. You will have to have interactions with the local street vendors or the shopkeepers or the residential people, or even the movement, traffic through traffic. Now, I quoted an example where in a street which has this food street with residential as well as commercial areas. Now, if we don't collect a proper data and if we don't have a proper interaction with our stakeholders, what might happen is someone might come up with a proposal saying, I'm just going to make this street a totally pedestrianized zone. I'm not going to have this vehicular movement inside. But when it is implemented, people won't respect that proposal. One of the examples for that is again Bhadra Fort. What we have quoted in the brief, that is a very good example of a very good design, how the interaction is done and how the proposal is very well built. But also at the same time, it also lacks a clarity on how not to make a zone totally pedestrianized without having a proper interaction with the stakeholders. Now, if you visit Bhadra Fort, like we just came back 2 days ago from Ahmedabad. So we were just seeing what all went wrong there. And we were just trying to analyze what was the proposal, what was happening before the proposal came up, and what is happening right now. Okay, things have changed, but few things are lacking behind. So we just want to try to bridge that gap. That's what the whole brief is. And also there's one more important point, which focuses on this time zone. Whichever area you pick up, or whichever zone, or whichever building you pick up, each and every second or each and every minute, the activity changes there. So your focus and your detailing should be related to that particular activity, and how the transition between different activities is happening. That is the key here, to come up with your requirements and the data collection for that particular site. So basically, end of the line is whatever site you select or whatever proposal you are coming up with, everything has to narrow down back to the stakeholders and to the site. Contextuality is very important. Without the context and without the response and without the data supporting what your street or what your site is saying, your proposal will not have any weightage. So that is the brief crux. I hope that clarifies most of your queries.
एकाला डायमेन्शन करायला पटपटली आता मी लॅपटॉप बंद करत आहे.
Yes, I think that was a clean explanation of her whole brief. I'll just interrupt, like ask one or two questions so that it will be more clear for the students. So one of the thing is the site coverage area. I'll repeat the question. Is it necessary to have the site zone of the selection as a whole, or there is a possibility for the zone to be in a part and summed up to 2 acres, plus or minus 2 acres?
Okay. So to answer that, yes, it has to be a single piece because as you start defragmenting and increasing the number of pieces, there will be no end to it. As I told, when we move even 100 meters in India, things change. When you move 1 kilometer, things change. So what we want to see is focus on one specific impact zone, one specific core, so that the clarity of the overall submission remains.
And your site can be a single stretch area, which is 2 acres, but your impact zone, what you have, that could extend beyond that 2 acres. So that you could identify and you could delineate the same impact zone when you are doing the study and when you are on the site, when you are trying to collect this data, till where that impact is happening of that particular site. If you're trying to do some proposals which is doing with something shifting or rejuvenating that particular site. And let me clarify this one more thing. One of the questions previously was, does it have to do with renovation or rejuvenation? See, it can be anything. You can just upgrade the current scenario. You can do the renovation. You can redesign the whole thing. You can replace the whole place into totally different function also. It can be adaptive reuse. That's what that phenomenon is called as adaptive reuse. So you can do any of the thing which suits that particular site as well as those stakeholders. So there's no restriction on that.
Yeah, I think that would be answering my next question also. That is, how many sample points must be chosen for the survey? So I'll move on. The next question is
regarding the sample points for your survey. When you visit the site, in one of the sites, it can be just 2. In one of the sites, it can be 3, or it can be 5, it can be 10. It totally depends on your site. So basically, site is your king here. Without the site and without the response to the site, what your site is demanding, nothing is going to go ahead from that point. You are still at the 0 level.
okay. And another question, sir. What does the brief mean by the term building to the street level?
That part, I think I have elaborated while explaining, but still to make it in a single sentence, building to street level, the phrase means that the selection of site can be a single building, which is your core maybe, or it can be a stretch of street. Okay, building to street level doesn't mean that it should be a building supported by a street. I think that is what some are getting the understanding of. But to be very clear, it can be a building, it can be a street. That is what that phrase means.
See, just to clarify more, building can be like if we go into this heritage areas. So there's one heritage monument, then the area surrounding it is the heritage precinct. Okay, if you have tried to understand the concept here, heritage monument is different, precinct area is different. Precinct is the impact zone. So if you're choosing a building, the impact of that particular building around it, that also matters here. If you're choosing a street, impact around that street matters. If you're choosing a zone, impact around that zone matters. Like basically the connecting streets to that particular zone, how those are behaving with that particular activity currently, and how that might change after your proposal comes up. So you just have to stimulate that as well, so that your proposal becomes more strong. And just imagine and just think about this ANDC trophy as if you're doing an actual proposal for the government agency.
Yes, sir. And can the design be proposed be repeated multiple times in the same or the different areas?
Yes, it could be. See, your design can be modular designs, right? So your analysis and your requirement set after your survey and after the data collection, you'll come up to a conclusion. So based on that, you might prepare modules of designs like, this particular stall or this particular residence or this particular market or this particular element can be of this module. And that could be multiplied, in several numbers in that particular design itself. In fact, if you're designing modules, you can also propose like, how this module could be modified to be fitted into different context altogether. To quote an example, like William sir was quoting about a Streets for People design challenge of Coimbatore. Similarly, there was Streets for People competition in Mysore also. So we had participated in that, and we had done the similar thing. What you just asked about the modules and how to study that site, and we had won that competition. In fact, that is being implemented now. the work has started. So your modules can be representing that site, as well as you can just show how this can be changed to a different context, like the joinery details, or how that module is getting formed, what is the squares, or what is the ratio of that, and all those things.
Just to add on, make sure that the modules which you design is right for the place, because something which is out of the line nowadays, people focus on container buildings and all, right? So imagine if I put a container building in the Marina Beach, it won't work out. So the module should be contextual, the module should be appropriate for the site, and it should be a design which is derived from your process.
Yes.
Okay, last but not the least, a technical question. I'll just read out the question. In the video submission, do we have to add the documentation of the site that we have selected, or do we only have to explain the purpose, process, design, impact, learning, etc. of the project?
I'll just set a back thought before you think about that. The reason for having a video, right? So we are all in the architecture fraternity. Okay. So when we do something, or when we produce or propose something, we propose it through drawings. That is what we read. Now we are doing something which is a report. Report is something which government bodies understand. So video is something which the public will understand. Okay. So when you are giving a proposal, and if the video is containing a slideshow of all the sheets which you have done, then no, don't do that. If the video is more of a descriptive way of explaining the data which you have, yes, you can. So I think you get the gist of what we are trying to convey over here. The video's agenda is to convey your idea in a visual manner.
It's more like you can start off with the introduction of what your site is or how the context is. Then you can show the process of data collection, maybe a couple of interactions where you're having with different stakeholders. Then you can show the whole site or whatever. And then you can come up with your proposals, like how that could be, maybe using the technology, you can propose a walkthrough of that particular area. And in that small video, if you show from the beginning till the end, that would gain a lot of traction when we are displaying it to the public for their opinion, or even to these government agencies, to make them understand in a much better way, apart from the figures and all the data what we have collected. Data matter a lot, because that is what counts. But these videos give them like, okay, whether this is in a state where this can be taken forward. So that clarity, that's why that video submission is very important. And that's why it is mandatory also.
Okay, thank you for sharing your knowledge and spreading light on the whole trophy and answering the questions. Students, please note, for my queries, visit NASA India website and please drop your queries. It will be answered in the query set 3. Hope you all got to know what is ANDC and hoping for more entries. The deadline is tomorrow, guys. That is 19th. It will end at 6 o'clock.
And from our side, we would be really happy if we see more and more participation, like at least after this session, where we just threw a little bit of light and we shared our perspective about the brief. Because at the end of the day, this is a competition and we cannot just decode the whole brief for you guys. But we have tried to make a little more clarity on what exactly we are looking at, and how the process can go forward. We hope to see a lot more entries and very good quality of work, because like the discussion with the Council of NASA is happening with our college. We are planning for a lot of things after this ANDC trophy with this particular competition, wherein we invite a lot of stakeholders who take major decisions, wherein this can be used as a platform to kickstart something new for the whole student fraternity. And we wish you all luck.
All the best, everyone. And we hope everyone got a bit more clarity on the perspective which has gone behind in the brief. And if still there are things which you feel is not clear, my advice will be, please start, read up more on each and every keyword which you feel is something which you are getting stuck in the brief. Because every word in the brief is there for a reason. And every word in the brief has some meaning, has some reason, association which has brought that into the brief. So all the very best, and we hope everyone has fun working for ANDC.
Thank you, sir. And guys, I have been receiving mails for the extension of the deadline of the submission. Hope you all know that multiple trophies have been working in parallel. So do understand, if we extend this, it will be a very big problem for you people to work on different trophies. We still have a talk from the council and even from the management. We are working on it, but try to finish as mentioned in the briefs, guys. Thank you. Thank you for joining.